about it. I was told that, oh yeah, it meets ADA specifications, but I don't know that for sure. So
all the playground equipment, all the ground medium that they
yeah,
play
yeah,
in.
yeah. Tom, what did you say about the
concession stands?
No, we don't have one of those, but I mean, this is just
parking spots, paved surface from the parking spot to the concession stand, to the facilities, to the playground. Yeah. If they're up on ADA, it very well could be, but
well, they is going to be me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's who they has to be now, okay? Because there's no other they, unfortunately. But here's a point I want to make, and this is important to me. I don't want to do this ADA compliance program because I want federal aid. I want to do it because it's the right thing to do, okay?
Correct.
I've never received a complaint where the problem's going to come in. Maybe problem's the wrong term, but where we can hold these public hearings. We can hold a public hearing, and we can get interested folks in the community to come in. But what we're going to keep hearing is the problems are in the incorporated areas of the county, and we'll have to go, sorry, can't help you there. That's what I fear. You know,
and I think as part of the meeting presentation of the draft plan, that's a subject that you hit.
I think it's huge, yeah.
What is it that the county is responsible? What is it, more importantly, they're not responsible?
Yeah, right.
Then that kind of short circuits some
Sure.
of these.
Here was a question I posed to NDOT and the city when we met last Friday, was the courthouse. The courthouse, which is located a couple blocks down, sits on county property. And I understand that all sidewalks leading to the courthouse is our issue.
Anything that you own is your issue.
Right.
Own and
well, what about the sidewalk that goes around the circumference?
State routes?
And that's city and state. City and state.
City and state, and that's their responsibility.
Right. That's what had to kind of have to be hashed out. That I understand once you step off that sidewalk onto ours that leads you to the door, that's our issue. But I wanted to make sure that we weren't being non-compliant on somebody else's.
Now, if for some strange reason that sidewalk is on your property and not the other public agency's property right away, then that's a little different story. Again, it's what you own and what you control.
Understand. Yep.
So the sidewalk that goes around the courthouse
is city.
Why did we pay for leveling last year?
Can't answer that. Well, I will answer that by posing another question, because Mr. Cobb brought it up. It's always been assumed, it's always been thought of as the sidewalk belongs to the person who owns the property. And indeed, just in the last year in Cherubusco, the town board has asked people to repair the sidewalks in front of their homes. Now you're giving me a different...
I'm saying that under the ADA law, it is your responsibility to provide an accessible way for ADA citizens.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that really changes things up.
Yes, it does.
That changes
and like I
viewpoints
said, that
up.
was in some of the communities we worked in. That's a bitter pill, because they're saying no, we do not take care of sidewalks.
And that's what you find.
Others say, well, you know, we got this 50-50 plan. We'll go in 50-50 with the property owner and da-da-da-da. And how you prioritize that sidewalk is up to you. It could be a very low priority, okay? So low that it might not get funded for 15 years, okay? The law just says your responsibility, you have to have a plan, it has to have inventory, it has to have cost, it has to have a financial plan. It doesn't say when you have to do stuff. And that's how I get
So
around
to answer
that.
your question, looks like we were just being good people.
Sounds to me like another big federal government deal that they in Washington have no idea, a little community out here.
All,
We got a sidewalk that comes up and down, freezing, so we try to take care of that so the people at the Saturday morning market, when they trip over it, and that was the problem, so we paid some guy Mangola to come down here to level them up.
Mhm.
What about being a rural community, what about voting areas?
Any area that's open to the public. So, yeah.
It's a
voting booth
one-day
is
deal,
open.
12 hours, one
It's
day
open
every
to
2
the public.
years.
Mhm.
We have to provide a non-gravel area for those people.
Gotta provide parking, gotta provide accessible way there, restrooms, and those,
So if
your
the
polling
people in
places.
But that's not, that is not county-owned property, right?
Right, that's church.
Well, now that, okay, if that's not county-owned property, it's not your jurisdiction.
But our clerk will come over here and the gal head of the voting and said, we have, because they get written up about it, because it's not ADA. You can't have a stone parking lot there for people to drive up in.
I
To
agree
get
that
out.
voting areas have to be ADA compliant.
Well,
It boils back to
some of them aren't,
who's
but
controlling.
it's not our
those.
property, and
Do you dictate that that property is used for a polling place?
yes, we have voting precincts.
We did it out of the goodness of our hearts.
Yeah.
We were not forced into paving that parking spot. And in fact, the church said, gee, that's a good idea, and they continued on and did their share. So I think in that particular case, we did it out of the goodness of our hearts. But had we not done it, they weren't gonna do it, and we would have lost the polling place.
Yeah, I think
Who gets written
that's-
up for that if it's not done? It's
The
not the
church.
church. It's right across the street, the clerk's office gets written up from the state voting board. You can't have that.
Yeah, because
We
you are
did the same
making-
thing with the Lions Club out of Tri-Lakes.
If you're
Right.
making that
And-
selection, I would believe, you have the responsibility that that site meets those criteria. If that site doesn't meet those criteria, then that site needs to be adjusted. Now, that can be a negotiated item between you and the property owner, or you go pick another site. But in picking that site, I can very well say that, yeah, it probably needs to be fully
Western
ADA
Center's
compliant.
another one out there. Michael, were you on board when we blacked out that area, Western Center?
Yes.
Okay, so it seems like every year that somebody's in here screaming at us because you made that a voting area and it's not compliant.
Mhm. And rightfully so. They have federal protection that those polling sites be accessible. And so as your selection, if you make that selection, that's something you very definitely should consider. And then if you find a site that's good for all those purposes other than ADA, then it becomes a matter of perhaps negotiation with the property owner about how that becomes compliant, whether that's your cost or theirs. But yes, within the limits of the federal law, you cannot discriminate against people from ADA
I'm not
community.
looking to discriminate, I'm just saying,
If it's
you
not
know, you
available
take
to them, that's
Coesty out here, for
discrimination.
example.
If it's
Say
not-
they all of a sudden they want sidewalks and there's none there, do we have to put them in if there's somebody in a wheelchair that wants to use them?
Yes,
Eventually.
exactly. The grievance procedure is a way for people to come to you and say, I want a sidewalk. I want to go down and see my mother-in-law. Okay, she lives 3 houses down in an unincorporated area. You have jurisdiction over that. Okay? So you look at that and you say, yes, it meets the criteria, no, it doesn't, whatever the rules are. And then make an assessment as to how much that's going to cost, if it's not already included in the plan. And then from your prioritization process, that tells you what priority that request has versus everything else that you've got responsibility for. And down at the bottom of your priority schedule may be residential sidewalks. Okay?
Do we have the right, if this person lives in house A, his mother lives in house B, to go across B and C and put a sidewalk in, say they don't want a sidewalk?
If you don't have right-of-way, then you will have to buy right-of-way or acquire it in order to build that.
fixing.
Stop digging, Tom.
I'm sorry I asked those questions.
Oh, it is.
What does Wells County do, Mr. Presidente?
No
Do I
priorities.
have permission to answer that question?
Yeah.
Jump right in anywhere, pal.
Since we've all dealt with this for a long time.
Yeah, I wanted to say, this is not a new issue, this is a really
No.
old issue.
No, and Mr. Cobb's talking about is right, but as we all know, common sense has to come into play somewhere along the way.
It's government, that never happens.
You're exactly right. I've been doing this 23 years. But I will tell you this, that when we did in Wells County and we have our study done and we have our priorities, it's really interesting when you're in an unincorporated area and like Commissioner Rathlake's talking about, I've got property A, property B, bad sidewalks on both sides, nice grass in between. They want you to be compliant to continue a sidewalk across there that hasn't been there for 60 years. And that's at the point where we as elected officials say, where do you work with this? This obviously wasn't here in the first place. Why are we responsible for something that wasn't there? And so the federal government says, well, you need to do this. Well, I think that's where your common sense comes into play and say, you know what, that hasn't been an issue. The homeowners that we all know are working, good people. We're gonna go over here where the sidewalks have been uprooted by tree roots and they all are out of sorts and move on. But, you know, they talk about the amount of money that you should put forth into your program yearly, and the number comes out at 10% is what we hear. And so, you know, $50,000 a year in Wells County. Well, we don't have $50,000 a year to put forth to that. We can't even come close to that. So then you say, okay, to do something that's right and to move forward to try and help to become ADA compliant, because we're all trying to help everyone involved, you set aside some money either through seeded or some other fund, and you know, is it ever going to be enough? Probably not. You never will. So I think you just ultimately you try to come to terms with a good number that everybody can work with, and we all know how cash strapped we are as locals and with all these state mandates, and move forward. And I think, you know, I've served with you gentlemen for a while, and I think it's a representation of Whitley County that you'll do what's right and to serve the public with it without bankrupting the county. I mean, because ultimately you can put all your efforts into it, and as you said, you're chasing the target.
Yeah, it is literally a moving target.
I didn't mean to go off on a
No,
little.
you're fine. There might be, in your case, there may be an alternate way by putting, say there is an intersection on either side of this, and maybe it's cheaper to put in a ramp and get from point A to point B, going by way of point D, E, and F. The law doesn't say that it has to be the most convenient, it's just that you need to provide. So they may have to go out of their way to get to where they want to go, but there is a way. Okay, so there's more ways than one to skin the cat.
Well,
Big-
we have
big
a
picture, just keep
good
in
man
mind
in
that-
charge of it. I know he'll keep us out of no bankrupt and stuff, so.
All right, any other questions?
Well, I just wanted to summarize it. I asked Mr. Cobb, his company, to come because we talked last week. We had a proposal from one company, and I think we all thought we need to look at a couple different proposals here. And I know it's a shot in the dark for you because she does, you know, it's very hard to come up with a proposal quote. And I'm not asking for one right now. I'm asking you to take the information you've heard from us and see what you can do and get back with us. And because this has gone on for years, and I don't suspect that it will go on for more years. So I want to learn, but at a slow, steady process. So I don't want to make myself, I don't want to make any commitments right now. I just want to learn more, but we do need to know if services are needed for these, you know, these items. So I appreciate your driving up here today
Sure, no problem.
to help us, and I can have subsequent meetings as well, you know, if it need be,
Okay.
so.
We should have something for you within about a week or so.
That's great.
Talking to Julie, there's some basic information we're gonna need.
Sure.
And, once we get that, and one of the things, just what you read off, is your unincorporated areas.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you want the thing, buildings.
In one part, that's kind of where we're, oh yeah, I can, yeah, I think we already talked about the list of buildings in the one park and in the unincorporated areas. So.
Once we have all of that together, we can put out something for you.
Okay.
All righty?
All right,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for your time, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.